This week on Influence, what are we doing about all the AI-generated content on Wikipedia? The answer is it's more complicated than you think. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Influence with me, Matt Silverman. Thanks for hanging out with me for another week here on the show. It's a program about internet communities and the people who make the internet worth interneting. The creators, the YouTubers, the podcasters, the newsletterers, you name it. It's the people who put the stuff on the internet that we love to watch, listen to, read, and consume. And if you are a longtime listener of this program in all its forms, you will know about my obsession with, dare I say, the miracle of Wikipedia. If you're an ancient elderly person like me, you may remember that when Wikipedia came on the scene, when we were in grade school, everyone was like, "Yeah, that's an encyclopedia that anyone can edit. Pfft, good luck with that. It's going to be full of misinformation and garbage. You got to stick with Britannica for that stuff." And lo and behold, decisions were made that allowed Wikipedia to flourish and become not just a piece of static media, but a community of volunteers who make sure that Wikipedia is useful and reliable for decades and hopefully decades to come. However, there is a new threat, ? We're going to discuss that today. The rise of generative AI, which we've covered extensively on this very program, has a lot of ramifications for everything that we create on the internet, everything we create and consume. And that is certainly true for knowledge, human knowledge. Wikipedia, going to the internet to find out information. And who wrote that information? Was it an expert? Was it a human? Was it a volunteer? Was it an advertiser? Was it a brand? Was it a robot? We're going to find out a little bit more about that today. My guest, I'm very excited to introduce you to him. He is currently the board president of the Wikimedia New York City chapter of the Wikimedia Foundation. I don't know if you've heard of New York City. It's a pretty populous place in my neck of the woods. A lot of people like to go there. You check it out. He's also a board of trustees member at the Wiki Education Foundation. I have questions about that. We're going to find out a little bit more about that in a bit. And in parallel to that, I'm very interested. Previously, he has been the Wikimedian in residence at a variety of museums here in that city that I just mentioned. The Metropolitan Museum of Art, been there, pretty great. The Guggenheim Museum and the Museum of Modern Art. I would like to know what a Wikimedian in residence at a museum. What is that? What is that job? We're going to find out. Please welcome Richard Knipel to Influence. Hello.
Thanks. Glad to be here today. Glad to talk about all things Wiki.
All things Wiki. Thank you for doing this. Let's start with your background. Like, what is it exactly that you do? I like to ask a lot of like social media influencers and creators, like, if you were to explain your job to a normal, like not extremely online person, a regular person in your family or at a coffee shop, like how do you communicate that?
Yeah, so it's a bit funny. So it depends. I guess it depends partly on your generation. So I like encyclopedias.
Right, exactly.
I like encyclopedias since I was a kid. I used to be a fan of like encyclopedias, the Britannica, the World Book, all that. When Wikipedia came out, I thought, wow, this is awesome. I can contribute to an encyclopedia. I can share about New York City, my city. I'm from here. I'm interested in New York history, things like that. And I like to, contribute to the sum of knowledge to try to bring people together as part of, organizing the Wikimedia New York City chapter. It means trying to grow the community of editors, trying to get input from experts in different fields, running what we call editathons, where people work on a particular topic together or for a topic that's undercovered, trying to innovate technologically in some ways, not like heavy technology, but more social technology. So a lot of all the ways that we can expand the encyclopedia and expand the community. A lot of it's outreach and connecting different institutions and partnerships.
Yeah, that's great. And just the relationship between the Wikimedia Foundation, which, correct me if I'm understanding this correctly, that would be the mothership, the nonprofit mothership, and then these are local chapters. How does that all ladder together?
Yeah, so the Wikimedia Foundation is a nonprofit. It's based in San Francisco, although it's rather remote oriented nowadays. It has several hundred employees, so it's it's significant, but it's nothing like like Meta and Google, etc. But it's it's larger than it used to be. It has staff that focus on the technology of the organization, focus on running as a nonprofit, doing things like fundraising. It does things like legal defense. Wikipedia and Wikimedia are under legal threat in a lot of countries around the world. But there are also a lot of it's not a membership organization. It's a nonprofit. It's not a membership organization. There are a lot of membership organizations in different parts of the world that support Wikimedia outreach in the local community. In some places, they're more country based. In some places, they're focused on a particular topic, like medicine. In New York, we have a thing focused on our region of the United States, New York, and the sort of the metropolitan area. And there's some other places in the United States that have similar groups.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this with you for many episodes and many hours, but it's I've not been aware that like, oh, this group of the foundation is focused on a topic like medicine, like maybe doctors and experts are focused on making sure that medical knowledge is accurate, as opposed to New York City people talking about the metro area.
Yeah, so there's an affiliate that's specifically focused on medicine, and of course there are editors online who are working on medicine topics, and they're not exactly the same. They're a bit different. One does more institutional things. There's definitely a very strong focus on making sure that we're up to date on medical topics, that we don't have misinformation or pseudoscience, that we have articles on diseases in important languages where these diseases occur. So translating the Ebola article into different languages where countries where Ebola might occur, things like that.
Right. Yeah, I know. Multilingual Wikipedia versus English Wikipedia. Like, I have 1,000 topics. Maybe we'll have you back in the future. But just one more question on your background. Then the board president role. I mean, this is all volunteer. This is not paid work or anything. But like the Wikimedia in residence, like part of the museums, were those like paid? Was that your job, or do you have another job on the side?
Yeah, so that was a job. I mean, it's not necessarily a full-time job. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. I helped organize a group of Wikimedians in residence at different institutions. Sometimes they're museums, sometimes they're libraries, sometimes they're universities. Sometimes it's a part-time position, sometimes it's a full-time position, and it has a lot of different formats. Basically, we're trying to figure out ways that institutions can interact more with this common nonprofit platform, rather than using all these weird proprietary platforms that exist in academia and the cultural sector.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So it's about, I guess my brain went to like, hey, you're going to make sure that the information about the Guggenheim is up to date and accurate. And it's probably some of that, but it's maybe more about how can the institution leverage the
part of it is
Wikipedia.
It's focused less on the institution itself and more on like the collections and the areas of research. So to the extent that we do have something on the institution itself, we want to have like appropriate conflict of interest policies. We don't want to say like the Guggenheim is the best museum in New York, and and it has no ethical issues. So anything around that, we want to have transparency around, and we propose maybe any particular changes, and there's the community discussion about that. But as much as possible, we try to focus on areas of outreach because not that. The people get more information from the web in a lot of cases and for Wikipedia than they do from like a museum website. So it's a parallel to that.
Right. Oh, that's very interesting. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thousands of more questions on those topics, but we'll save it for a future episode. So you mentioned that you were very interested in encyclopedias as a kid. Like, so when you discovered Wikipedia in its early days, like, what were you doing? how did you become an editor? Like, what was your path to like engaging with the
So
editor
I
community?
was in college at the time, undergraduate. I was taking an anthropology course, some anthropology courses. I had I think the first thing I wrote was there's a body of water in New York City called the East River. It's not actually a river. So I question that. It's a tidal estuary.
Is it not? Is it like? Oh, it just
It's
see,
not. It's
hey, I
not a
just
river.
learned something. Great.
But it's on the other side of Manhattan to the Hudson River, which is a river. So the people call it the East River.
Mm-hmm.
It's been called that since Dutch times.
Okay.
But there was another. I saw a map. I saw an old map that said the East River or the Sound River, named after the Long Island Sound, and I thought that was a poetic name.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first edit to Wikipedia, and then it was removed because it didn't have a source.
Okay.
And then eventually I edited it back, and then it was removed again. And then eventually I sourced it to the actual historical map, which is on the Library of Congress, slightly unconventionally.
Okay.
The first article
so
I started.
Your very first edit was this.
Yeah.
It was this back and forth.
It was this back and forth. Yeah.
Okay,
and I guess not everyone would have appreciated the back and forth. To me, I guess it was interesting. It might have turned other people off. And part of doing this outreach is to attract people who might not be naturally attracted to something that would have a little bit of a back and forth, and that might have some resistance to help guide people and show them how to get through it.
That's the thing. Like, having covered this a little bit, like I now understand that Wikipedia is an ongoing conversation, millions of ongoing conversations. But I think normal people are just like, yeah, you just go and change it. You change it, and someone else change it. Like, yeah, it's just, I don't know. People are. We need to. It's your job to educate the wider public about how Wikipedia actually works, so that we can think critically about it.
And it depends a lot on the type of topic and how much scrutiny it gets. Obviously, something like a big political topic or something in the news or international news is going to get a lot more attention, got a lot more discussion. Those are often going to be the most reliable topics, actually, even though they're the most controversial because they have a lot more eyes on them.
Oh, because there's so much focus.
Yeah. So, if there's an article, the article on Donald Trump, every sentence of that is going to be very closely scrutinized to see, is this a fair summary? Is this reflecting the sources? How does this compare to, how we treat other, like, say, Donald Trump was convicted of some felonies. How does this compare to how we treat other politicians who've been convicted of felonies? How do we discuss, the previous president who had 2 terms that were separated? A lot of things like that. So there's going to be more scrutiny on things like that. The biggest potential actually for misinformation is on lesser profile things. Your city council person.
This is so fascinating. It makes so much sense, but I think we would assume the opposite. That high profile people are going to be, there's a bunch of graffiti on this page, partisan,
because
whatever.
if you look if you look at social media or like Reddit, you'll see like this really questionable stuff coming up about like national news and international news like every day. And you're going to see some ridiculous thing about Donald Trump or about Kamala Harris or whatever, and it's coming from different political points of view, but it's but you're not going to get that so much on Wikipedia. You might get it on some very side article that's not as well watched. So maybe there's a small article about a particular controversy, but certainly you're not going to get that nonsense for any length of time on like the Donald Trump article or the Kamala Harris article or things like that.
And briefly, and I know some of the answers to this, but like briefly for listeners who might be somewhat new to the topic, like how? You know what I mean? Like, what do you attribute this accuracy and this communal sort of shared value of accuracy? Because there is nothing else like this on the internet, and I've never seen anything like Wikipedia ever. What is the secret?
Yeah, it's a community. I think it helps a lot that it's a nonprofit. So we're not, there's no one incentivizing people to fight with each other. They fight with each other sometimes, but at least there's no profit incentive that's pushing it forward. The people who are active on Wikipedia for the most part, for the overwhelming part, are legitimately trying to write an encyclopedia that is useful to people with all sorts of political opinions. They're trying to, summarize things fairly. Everything is based on reliable sources. So we're, looking at what's published in newspapers and journals and things like that, and we're trying to summarize it in a fair way. And if we have so we don't, we don't have a strong tolerance for like conspiracy theories and weird things that are made up. A lot of the discussion on something like a high profile topic will be the emphasis that we give to different things and how do we word things and where do we, do we mention this controversy in the beginning or do we put it down in the middle? And then we look at some of the what reliable sources say and try to come to something about that. Wikipedia definitely wouldn't work if it wasn't like a self-motivating community where most people meant well, even if they're sometimes wrong. The great majority of Wikipedia editors, mean well and are trying to write a neutral article that's useful to people of all points of view.
It's a good faith effort to create an accurate encyclopedia. And like you said, there's no profit motive. But then also I think about that there's no glory in it, meaning having 1,000 edits on Wikipedia does not gain you followers or notoriety, or unless you disagree with that. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, it's very different. Like you mentioned, like influencers and content creators. So we have, these people exist on Wikipedia. I know some of them. A lot of them are friends. Okay. They do not get a lot of glory. There's a guy in New York who has written. He started by writing the articles in all the New York City subway systems, New York City subway stations, the entire system. Now he does like every Broadway theater. He's done basically every building in Manhattan that's famous.
Amazing. And
it's like mostly one person who's like has a lot of passion and a lot of dedication, and nobody knows his name. His name is Ryan Eng. His user Epic Genius. He's awesome. We have we made like a little tool to like show off his show off some of his contributions called Tour NYC with Epic Genius. There's not like this glory. Wikipedia editors don't always usually like show their face or everything or have their names attached to things. There's some negative sides to that in terms of we don't get the recognition, and maybe people don't realize that they can be part of it in the same way that they feel like they can be part of like TikTok. But
yes, we've covered this too. Yeah, of like how do you get people excited about editing Wikipedia?
Yeah.
That's an interesting dichotomy there.
Yeah, so we were trying to.
You can't get people too excited because if you have the masses descending, just doing whatever they want, like that's probably also not healthy.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want people who come with commercial motives or partisan motives or government, driven by government motives. But we try to engage with the local community, and that's what we do with Wikimedia New York City. Is we try to like do outreach events, make it like fun, give it a human face. So, for example, next week we have a photography event where we're meeting at a public library in Greenwich Village, and we're going to do like a photo walk and show people how to upload their photos to Wikimedia and to use them in articles, things like that, and sort of make a social atmosphere out of it.
Really cool, wonderful. You're leading me into my next question, which is like these sort of these pieces of the site that are built on, like tacked on, these products where like you're saying, oh, we're going to highlight this contributor, et cetera. And that's leading me to like, what is a wiki project? Like how does the tech, how are you adding tech or community things behind the scenes of the sort of landing pages?
Yeah. So, as you've seen Wikipedia, everything on Wikipedia is a page that you can edit. We also have pages for things that are not articles. So we have pages that are policies. We have pages that are guidelines, which are less strict than policies, and we have essays, which are less strict than those. These are all editable, and they're all they're all have subject to discussion, so policies can evolve over time. In addition to this, we have wiki projects. So wiki projects are very mostly they're very informal. Some are a little bit more formal. Informal things made by editors saying, hey, there's an issue that's come up. We want to like discuss, like say Wiki Project Japan. So there's a project, it's a project on a particular language, Wikipedia in this case. So how do we write articles about Japan on English Wikipedia? We want to make sure that we cover, the major cities and the prefectures. How do we transliterate between Japanese and English? We have a standardized way to do that. And that's like hopefully the preferred academic way to do that. How do we, deal with issues of historiography and different narratives in Japanese history, say around World War II or, with any country, these issues come up. And sometimes they're for particular, they're not for like a topical area, but they're for like something that some trend that comes up where we need help with. So in the past, we've had a special trend around biographies of living persons, making sure that
Okay.
biographies of living persons, particularly, we watch them closely for potential misinformation or libel, making sure that if something negative has a proper source, so people are protected in that way. And more recently, I think something you want to talk about here is the issue of AI. And someone recently started a project on WikiProject AI Cleanup. It's an informal group of people who are watching Wikipedia articles, looking at suspected AI contributions, evaluating them, removing stuff that's bad, and trying to come up with the best practices around this issue.
Yep. Okay. So what are the concerns that this group or the wider community have about AI generated articles or AI generated edits? Like how are people using AI on Wikipedia, and what are we worried about?
Yeah. So people actually have been using AI and Wikipedia for like about 20 years, in all
Okay.
sorts of different ways, both to evaluate edits that are coming in, to sort of like, does this include profanity and like random insults? And sometimes AI can evaluate that, if it's very obvious.
Yep.
And so that's one of the feeds where people watch all the edits that are coming in. It's called Recent Changes Patrol. Also,
Okay.
People, of course, have been using generative AI more recently to write articles. We actually had an experiment a long time ago. It was called Rambot, where someone used a very early AI to write articles on every census designated place in the United States.
And wait, every what place?
Census designated place. So every town and city, including like places that are 150 people and they're not like officially on the map, but they're in the census.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, you're making a very important distinction between like AI or tech tools that can kind of like look around and identify problematic stuff versus generative AI, which is newer. And so generating like this place exists done is like seems fine.
Yeah, even that was, believe it or not, was controversial at the time, because they were kind of boring articles. They were like, this town has this population, it exists in this year. It would have like some demographic information, and it could really have been replaced by a table. And it was like, are you creating too many? On the concerns of the time, were you creating too many machine-written things? Or is anyone ever going to edit these articles? Are any humans ever going to edit these articles?
But that's just semantic of like, do we need 1,000 articles, or can we just make a table of towns? Like, okay, that's just,
or also,
let's
are
choose
there
one.
humans that can monitor them if something goes wrong with them? So like I said, the high profile,
exactly, or if information changes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so more recently, obviously, generative AI has come out. I actually wrote the first openly declared generative AI article on English Wikipedia.
Okay, which
it was called Artwork Title. It was about the titles of artworks. Because I've been doing some museum work, I got interested in the titles of artworks and how they how do artworks that never had a title are given a title by history or art scholars or by museums. Sometimes the title changes. The museum decides that it wants to give it a different title based on new research or on something that might be offensive. And so it's a sort of an interesting history of it. And I couldn't find like easily a source for it, so I experimented with writing with ChatGPT. Back when it started a few years ago, and it was kind of like, as ChatGPT tends to be, and this type of thing tend to be, it was like very like vague and had like hints of things, but also like, sort of made up things or just like weird generalities. But I did it as an experiment, and I edited it and removed, much of it, and I added other stuff, and I tried to find sources for things that seemed like they were probably true. Some people have done experiments like that. It hasn't been that much, but there's been some experiments along those lines.
I mean, and this is the right way to use these tools of like, it gives you the framework, but then a human being goes to make, because we cannot see inside the black box. We cannot see what ChatGPT is sourcing. So you are then double checking as the editor to make sure that it's legitimate. And if that speeds up the process while still providing accurate information, then that to me does not seem problematic. Like copyright the generative AI, like scraping copyrighted works, is a separate topic, about the ethics of that. But like this is a responsible use of the tool, as
Yeah,
I
and my
understand it.
purpose in the experiment was try to figure out like what should be our policy, what should be, what should be, what are the best approaches, because I don't, I'm not sure I did the best approach. I'm not sure what the best approach is, but like figuring out we should have a policy on this issue. We should declare, for example, we should declare if we use generative AI, we should declare like what we used and how we used it, what tools we used. Now there are more tools that you can base things more on specific sources. So Notebook LLM is a tool that some people are exploring, and some others. And of course, I mean, it makes a lot of sense in a lot of cases to like use it for something more like copy editing rather than writing something totally new. Um, we do have some experience, fortunately, with Wikipedia about relatively low quality things generated by humans and editing them so they become better. AI is not exactly the same because it makes different mistakes, but it has something in common.
This is interesting.
And so
Yeah. So what? Okay, so two questions there. When you say we created a policy, obviously the policy is a page that can be updated and changed and will evolve. So that is sort of set but evolving. But then okay, so you see, paragraph A is a low quality thing written by a human, and so an editor would address that, and paragraph B is a low quality thing written by ChatGPT. What's the difference? What are the differences between those two things in terms of policy and in terms of what you just said? Like, oh, LLMs make different mistakes than humans make.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, the world's greatest expert on the peculiarities of LLMs, but they have, like I said, they have these fluttering generalities. They tend to, if they don't know what's going on, they refer to something else that sounds similar. Mistakes like that. Humans make, a little bit different mistakes, like they're just like misinformed or they're, misremembering something. And I mean, I would probably put more credence in a low quality human than a low quality AI, just because I would try to like figure out what were they thinking, like what were you actually thinking of what was this human thinking of when they were trying to put this in, and maybe they didn't have the language to express it right. Yeah. Well, I would not put that good faith in a low quality AI because they're not really thinking anything; they're just sort of trying to predict something.
AI can't misremember. It's just going to substitute. It's just going to fill in the gaps that it doesn't have. But it can't, like, if you were like, who was the actor that played this in the 1959 film? It's going to know. It cannot not know.
Yeah.
But if there's a gap in the sources, it'll just make it up,
it'll just say like,
that's an interesting
Tyrone
distinction
Gable.
between.
It'll make up the name of a Hollywood actor, fake.
Yeah. It's just like, it's an interesting difference between human cognition and generative.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should
thinking, but
I think we should experiment more with it. I think it's a useful tool. We haven't quite figured out the best way to use it. I think something like WikiProject AI Cleanup makes sense, as keeping an eye on especially the low quality submissions and making sure that they're taken care of. There's obviously a danger of particularly people using AI for partisan reasons, for government reasons, for commercial reasons, and using that scale of being able to write a lot of things very quickly to influence Wikipedia in a negative way. And I think WikiProject AI, some cleanup is a very wiki way to help deal with this issue. Not having necessarily a hard and fast rule, but like evaluating things on their own cases and trying to evolve policy over time. So I support that.
Right. Bad actors aside, as you just mentioned, like people trying to influence whatever, sort of a philosophical question, like why even use it at all? If the goal of the community is accuracy, full stop, why, what's the sort of incentive to be like, well, what if we could make articles faster and then double check them and whatever? Like, why the rush, I guess? And I'm saying that from I'm not pro or against. I'm just sort of trying to understand. We have some listener questions about it too, of like, why use it at all? Because like in a business, it's like, what if we could sell widgets 10 times faster with AI, fine. There's a business incentive, but that's not present on Wikipedia, as we've talked about.
Yeah. So we don't have, we're not trying to sell widgets. We are trying to, we have two goals, I guess. We probably more than two goals, but we want, accurate information. We also want, comprehensive information.
Right. Okay.
And we want to, there are a lot of areas where Wikipedia is still undercovered. It has, I think about 7 million articles in English, others in more languages. But I still think, some people think that Wikipedia is relatively complete, or at least in English. I think actually the founder of Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales, thinks that it's relatively complete. I disagree, actually. I think there's room for many millions more topics.
That's interesting. So, why does he think that? There's always more things happening.
It is as useful or more useful than Britannica ever was, which is a valid point. Yeah. And also, I guess part of his interest, which is a very which is a very laudable interest, is trying to improve Wikipedia in languages other than English. Especially, people can read something in their native language; they can get a lot more out of it often. Yeah. And so that's part of his, I guess, motivation there. But I do think not just new things that are happening. I think, I often I'm reading a newspaper or something. I still read newspapers. And I see a concept or a term or a person, and I think, is this represented on Wikipedia in a full way? Mm-hmm. And often it's not. And I wish I had the time to do them all. And I try to, and but I still think there are a lot of things. And there are more people looking for information on particular topics. And I'm concerned also that people are getting some of this information from social media or from AI, generative AI. And I'd rather get that information from Wikipedia because it's more likely to be higher quality and not partisan and not trying to sell them something. And so I guess we're in a little bit of an arms race with people who are trying to give information on maybe some niche topics or some topics that we don't fully explore on Wikipedia yet.
Right. Speaking of the arms race, so how is generative content identified in the first place? Are editors using other AI tools to try to sniff out AI-generated text and images?
Yes, they are to some extent. So I haven't explored this very fully, but the people have been using some tools, and some of the tools are very not useful because they're AI tools. Okay. And because actually a lot of something like ChatGPT is based on Wikipedia, so it's
yes. Okay.
So Wikipedia is the number one source for ChatGPT.
Yes.
And so some of the sentences are going to look strangely Wikipedia-like. And they'll be more opinionated than Wikipedia. They'll have, other things that are different. But some of the sentences will be strangely Wikipedia-like. So some of these standard tools, I think one's called ChatGPT 0 or GPT 0 or something like that, they'll have a lot of false positives, where something will turn up.
Okay.
Something will be evaluated AI when it's not necessarily AI. I think probably images, it's probably easier to evaluate something that's an AI generated image. We also have debates about when is it appropriate to use AI images on Wikipedia, because sometimes I think it is appropriate. I've done a couple of myself. So one I tried to add was the New York City sewer alligators, which is an old urban legend where people mostly my parents' generation would talk about getting a little baby alligator from Florida, and then someone would flush it down the toilet, and then it would live in the sewer and grow gigantic. And so I tried to create a nice AI image of that, and it was removed. I put it on the Wikipedia article, and it was removed because it was too realistic looking.
Because
I wasn't trying to fool anyone.
It's really interesting,
but just to illustrate the concept.
But I think if I Googled subway alligator and then clicked on the Wikipedia as the first result and was like, oh, it's there, it's really real, and I didn't read the article, then I as a dumb person or as a casual, lightly informed person might get tricked.
Yeah.
I might tell someone, oh yeah, I saw on the internet that there was an alligator in the sewer. I get that. I get why you'd remove that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's part of it's how do you design the policy and the guidelines? So probably we want more cartoony images. So we want to because there is something to having there's something to having an image connect to something, but maybe you don't want something that's too realistic. or maybe you want to,
And then it makes me think of like maybe, I don't know, not a scientist, but like, are there scientific models? Could we illustrate what an atom looks like using AI to somehow explain a concept on Wikipedia? I don't know. That's just a
I think so.
silly
I mean,
example,
I'm not
but
sure if it's
maybe.
really, I'm not sure if it even is generative AI, but definitely people have been
Hmm.
using a lot of like scientific illustrations of molecules and things like that.
Okay.
And we should
Okay.
only have more of that. And we should have, I mean, it's another thing is that, Wikipedia is coming up short in multimedia. Um, and
Right. Hmm.
how do we compete with things that are like video first? And some
Interesting.
people are more reluctant to read, or they're not used to reading, especially long form things. And so there's a
Right.
question of how do we balance that um, in terms of making Wikipedia useful to new generations.
That's actually a really great use of generative, which would be synthetically generating the text as audio or video. I don't know if video would be useful,
Yeah,
but because, like, speaking personally, I don't like to read. I like robots reading to me. I love podcasts, and I like when I have to digest a long article on Wikipedia or elsewhere, I will sometimes convert it into an MP3 and listen to it while I'm washing dishes.
yeah.
So
We
like
actually
that
before
would be.
generative AI, we had a very active project. Well, not very active, but
Mhm.
it was somewhat active called Spoken Wikipedia, where people would just like
Okay.
record their own personal versions of reading a Wikipedia article aloud, and they would have to tie it
That's out
to.
of date in 10 seconds.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is out of date. So they have to say exactly what timestamp of the article it was,
Oh, God.
and sometimes there would be like personal idiosyncrasies where someone would read it in an odd way, um, and
Mhm.
so that made some controversy as well. So we'd have full guidelines about how do you read the article. I think there's a lot of tools now that can do that, generative AI for reading articles, and I'm not there's anything native built in, but obviously people use all sorts of other tools, and I'm sure they will have something, in the medium term that'll be able to handle that. But maybe also want to think about
Very,
like
very interesting.
we've given some thought about like how do we generate like a both like reading and maybe like a slideshow, and like you pick up select images and how do you show them and make it a meaningful like short video type thing. And that would be a good use
Great
of,
for schools too.
yeah, it'd be good use of like generative AI to like say, hey, take the Wikipedia article on optics and make that like a, I don't know, a 15-20 minute video where it reads the article or reads parts of the article and shows some of the relevant images in a way that doesn't
Right.
hallucinate.
Yes. It's getting at the nut of like Wikipedia works because text can be edited and changed and
Yes,
updated and evolved
that's the strength
instantly,
of it. Yeah.
but all other media cannot do that except until now. If a thing can plug in and you make an edit to the alligator page and then it reflects that in the audio or video right
Yeah.
away,
Yeah.
that's game changing.
Yeah.
I've never thought of that.
Yeah, we've experimented in the past about video editors, collaborative video editing. It's very difficult, like
No,
editing a
because
video
yeah,
like
it's
you would a
too
wiki
hard.
article. I think
Yep.
there was a Kaltura, the company made some like maybe 10 years ago. There are a few other versions of it.
Hmm.
It never quite worked out. I think Mozilla worked on the problem for a
Yep.
time, but I think with
Interesting.
generative AI, I think it's becoming a more realistic prospect for the wiki world if we can find a way to do it responsibly.
Interesting. Yep. Yep. All right. And just I want to split hairs again too. That is about using AI to communicate the valuable information. It's not about using AI to generate new information
Yeah, to try to
in this
translate into different
example. And I
medium
think
because
that's
a lot of
yeah,
people are more comfortable with audio or video, and that's not Wikipedia's strength, and it's not
yeah.
and there's the increasingly people are interested in like, can I see a short video on this topic rather than can I read an article on this topic.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. You mentioned about the tool using ChatGPT to find ChatGPT generated content and how that is a whole minefield. And I have a questions about that. We have listener questions, but
Mm-hmm.
first we need to take a break. And before we
Okay.
take a break, we must do our court mandated trivia segment where I attempt to stump Richard with a multiple choice trivia question. Are you prepared? Are you strapped in? Are you
Oh
buckled
yeah,
in?
I'm prepared. I've been preparing for the last, I don't know, 10 minutes on this.
Okay, all right. He's definitely ready. Today's episode is about the digital repository of all human knowledge, most of human knowledge. That is Wikipedia, of course. Today's trivia is about knowledge of geography, specifically when it comes to kids. And I'm going to play a little clip for you here. Maybe you'll remember it.
Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
Where in the world is
Carmen Sandiego?
And one of these people could find her.
Among my encyclopedia and gazetteer heroes is Carmen Sandiego and Encyclopedia Brown.
Amazing. This is, of course, from the hit PBS game show, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, which was, of course, based on the hit computer game of the same title, made by Broderbund, I believe. This game show is where kids would compete in geography challenges in order to capture the notorious titular crime boss. This ran from 1991 to 1995, so only 4 years, and made 295 episodes, which I learned that in this research, and that's crazy. It was created because kid-centric shows like Double Dare were all the rage at this time. Also, related, game shows were way cheaper to produce than scripted television or animation for kids. But did you also know that Carmen Sandiego was created as a response to a very alarming National Geographic survey of Americans? What troubling statistics about geography knowledge did National Geographic find? One of these is true, and the other two I made up. So you're looking for correct, the actual statistic from, this is probably 1990, maybe 1989. National Geographic interviewed Americans about geography, and they were like, oh shit, we gotta fix this. We gotta figure this out. Are you prepared?
Okay, yes, I'm prepared. I'm traveling back in time, and I'm using my audience estimator.
Great. Was it A, 1 in 4 Americans could not locate the Pacific Ocean on a map? That is A. Or is it B, 1 in 3 Americans did not know that Japanese and Korean were languages, assuming everyone in Asia spoke Chinese? That is choice B. Or is it C, half of Americans could not name either of the two countries that share a border with the United States? Which of these was a true finding from the National Geographic survey right before Carmen Sandiego was rushed to save America from this catastrophe?
I'm gonna guess the Pacific Ocean.
Okay. You seem very confident. What's your thought process?
Yeah,
there?
I mean, well, first that I'm thinking like languages probably wouldn't have been a strong prompt for Carmen Sandiego. I think most Americans probably, a very large percentage of Americans probably know about Mexico and Canada, and I feel like the Pacific would be a very prominent thing, but also that Americans might miss, especially if they're not on the West Coast.
Great. I love this reasoning. I love this logic. We will find out if Richard has gotten the correct answer right after this break. Time to thank all the people who subscribe and support this program on patreon.com/influencepod, including those who contribute at the executive producer tier. Those folks are Bowie Barks, Dominic Kerr, Duran, and William. Of course. Thank you to everyone who supports the show, even with a like or subscribe on any social media platform or on any podcast platform, audio or otherwise. Don't forget to leave a review or leave a comment. That always helps people find the show and get connected to our excellent community. And speaking of communities, it's about time to return to the Wikipedia community and see if Richard got the trivia question correct. We are back with Richard Knipel, the board president of Wikimedia New York City, many other positions and volunteer efforts on wikipedia.org. And we're going to find out if he has answered the trivia question correct. The game show on PBS, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, was made for a variety of reasons, but one was in direct response to a very alarming National Geographic study of Americans' knowledge of geography. Was that A, 1 in 4 Americans did not know where the Pacific Ocean was? Richard chose A. Was it B, that they did not know, they thought everyone in Asia spoke Chinese? That was choice B. Or was it C, half of Americans could not identify Canada or Mexico on the map? Richard went with A, the Pacific Ocean. He had very sound reasoning. I always give guests a chance to change their answer if they've reconsidered during the break. Are you sticking, or are you going to reconsider? What do you think?
I'm not certain, but I'm going to stick.
Okay, he's sticking. The correct answer is, according to a New York Times article from 1981, this would meet Wikipedia's standards for sourcing, I hope, that chronicles the rise. This was an article about the rise and success of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. The inexpensive hit game show was made in part because 1 in 4 Americans could not locate the Soviet Union or the Pacific Ocean on a map of the world. Richard gets it right. Congratulations. I did not offer a prize this time, but let's see. I will attend half of your board meetings so that you can just like hang out.
You have to write a Wikipedia article. That's your donation.
Oh, wow! Challenge accepted. This is it. I'm too scared to do it, and I don't feel like I'm an expert enough at anything, So, like, what advice do you have for me and others who are like Wiki curious?
I would just like if you're reading like the news or something and you see something interesting and maybe it's not covered on Wikipedia, then maybe start it. There's like a diplomatic initiative or there's some economic thing going on. It doesn't have to be in the area of your expertise. But we could always use more ideas and more thoughts, or even just if you want to get something small, you can edit the article in your hometown, or
yes, right,
something like that.
I've had a friend who's done that. Well, and I'll give you an example from my real life that I was curious about. We obviously, the election just happened, and we have a congressperson in our district who we don't care for. Like, we are not aligned with this candidate's policies and ethics. And then it came out in the news that, he was under investigation for a variety of unsavory things. And then we looked at the Wikipedia article, and those things, which were reported in reputable mainstream sources like the New York Times, were not there. And so I was like, me and a few friends were like, why isn't the Wikipedia article updated? We need to make sure that his Wikipedia is updated so voters can be informed. But we also have a strong political bias against this person. So like, we didn't know if it was ethical for me to update the article because we have bias. So like, but the facts were, the reporting was real, was factual.
If that happened to me, like, first thing I would do is I would look at the article and its history and its discussion. So I would see, has this information been in the article before? Was it removed? Was it removed for a particular reason? Is there a discussion about this somewhere? If I felt that was particularly close to the case, I might put it on the discussion page and as a suggestion to others. Every Wikipedia article has a discussion page. It's sort of like the backside of a sheet of paper. It was actually the single biggest technical innovation when Wikipedia was invented was that used to be that the wikis as like editable pages just existed on their own, but Wikipedia sort of invented having a discussion page for each page, which is makes it a little bit easier to engage with people.
Is this the talk page? Is that the same terminology? Yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah. Okay, that's a great tip of like, hey, I'm not going to be the editor. I'm not going to make the change, but I'm putting this into the discussion.
Or even if it's like
future editors can be aware.
This article is about me, and I want to suggest the change, but it's a conflict of interest, or it's about my company or whatever. And it's not necessarily that they're going to act on it, but hopefully someone will look at it if it's a relatively high prominent thing, and they'll say, hey, does this might this fit? Is there a particular way to put this in? And hopefully it'll generate discussion for a couple of other more neutral people watching the article.
Okay, this is really good advice, and I will take you up on that in the future as these things present themselves. So I promised you listeners, and Richard, of course, that we have a variety of questions from our listeners. Bowie Barks on our Patreon has a question for you, which is, where is most focus placed on cleaning up AI-generated content? Are specific categories or article types targeted first for cleanup, or is it just more like, hey, wherever the bots find it or wherever we come across it? And then Bowie Bark's like second part of the question is, my understanding is that some groups have used AI tools to help produce articles of value about underrepresented groups, which you talked about a little bit, and that AI generative could be useful to increase the visibility or volume of articles that are missing from Wikipedia. So two-part question. One we've touched on a little bit, but like, where is WikiProject Cleanup focusing? Where do they look first? If you know.
So I'm not involved with the day-to-day operations of the Wiki project. It's like I say, it's a sort of an informal collective that a bunch of folks have been involved with. Probably their main focus, I think, is on new articles. So because that's often people. There's this group called Recent Pages Patrol or New Pages Patrol, where they look at especially new articles, and they want to see are these quality articles? Are they AI generated? Is there are they promotional of either a business or a point of view? And there's a special scrutiny toward that. If someone somehow had an AI generated article from years ago, maybe that would have flown over the radar. If they had like an early model or whatever. But now there's a little bit more scrutiny. I imagine people are particularly watching, both things that are oddly worded and things that promote a business or political point of view, which is the same thing we look for with low quality human articles.
With human articles, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep, that makes sense.
Because we always thinking is someone creating this out of their general interest in having a better encyclopedia for everybody, or are they doing this because they want to promote their business, or because they want to promote their favorite politician, or something like that.
And you covered it. You gave us one example of like generating articles or lists or tables at a volume that would be very difficult or slow for humans to create. But do you know of any examples of like generative used as a tool to increase coverage of a marginalized or underrepresented group? Like we talked about, here's all the towns in the census, but that Bowie Barks is talking about a slightly
I think there's been some explorations of that. I'm not sure. Like we've done people have done some experiments. I don't know if it's done in a hugely systematic way, but people have looked at things for even one use of artificial intelligence obviously is just like translation, right? Using AI tools to aid with translation, making sure that topics are covered in under supported languages. Sometimes using things like we had a recent editathon on where we come together and work on a topic together on Latino topics, and someone did an experiment with AI to write an article about the International Salsa Museum, which is opening in the Bronx, and trying to find. Cool. In that case, they actually used Notebook LM to try to summarize a few reliable sources. So they used some news articles about the organization, and I think probably the organization's website as well. And I anticipate there'll be more focuses on that as time goes on. There are a lot of mostly human made or human mediated focuses on different undercover topics. There's a project called Women in Red, a Wiki project Women in Red, which is one of the most organized.
Which long-time listeners will know that we've covered Women in Red here. Ms. Knight Goodwin. I'm blanking on her first name, but she was wonderful. Rosie. Oh, Goodnight. Yes, I'm sorry. I misspoke her name. I'm glad you know her. She was a guest on this show, and she was and is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, they've used a lot of data science tools to try to find different biographies of women, and and help maybe help pre-populate writing a new article. And I imagine that AI tools might be useful in that effort if they haven't been used directly. They've probably been used on a small scale, but not a larger scale.
Yeah. Again, gathering data and information to propose a starting place, and then letting humans provide context and color and information and sourcing.
And trying to find the right process for that. It fits within the Wiki ethos.
Right. Okay. Love it. Thank you, Bowie Barks, for the questions. As always, we have a listener voicemail.
Call through the public. Call.
This is from Evan. I believe this is another two-part question. So here is a voicemail for Richard.
Hey, Influence, Evan here. I have a question about credentialism and AI on Wikipedia. Wikipedia's best attribute, of course, is that it's open and anyone can contribute their knowledge, but the danger there, of course, is that anyone can just go on and make things up, too. Now, with the rise of AI, it feels like people can make things up faster than humans can correct it. So my question is, does Wikipedia get to a place of credentialism, a place where everything has to be vetted before it's posted, or where there are trusted contributors and people who are at a lower rank? Does that, and what happens to Wikipedia if that becomes the case? Also, one more related question here. Lots of artists, lots of writers, understandably do not want their data used to train LLMs and generative AI. And recently, some platforms like Blue Sky have pledged that they will not use their user data to that end, which sounds great, except that platforms like Blue Sky or like Wikipedia are open platforms. Anybody can access that data. And I think as we've seen with companies like OpenAI, there's nothing stopping them from gathering that data. So my question is, will platforms like Wikipedia, like Blue Sky, have to implement some sort of measure to stop that data? And can such a measure even exist? I think some of these companies have shown a willingness to ignore the robots.txt file, for example. Is there anything that companies can do to prevent their user data from being scraped by AI companies and used to train an AI? And should they do that? Thanks so much, and thanks for all the work you do.
If generative gets out of hand or there's too much chaos on the platform, like, could credentialism... Does that go against Wikipedia's core ethos?
Yeah. So so obviously, I don't think it's out of hand yet. Part of why we built WikiProject AI Cleanup, not me personally, but as the folks in the community have done, is to deal with this issue and to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. We do have some tools in place for protecting an article, and also for like having only an approved version being posted. This has been implemented in some language Wikipedias. It was implemented on English in a very limited capacity. It's mostly been deprecated because it's found to be it being more open is it leads to more growth overall. And so we have this rather than having like a preferred version that's saved and maybe it's updated once or twice a day. We found it's easier to develop it continuously. Although this might change. We do have that software in place. It's used for some things. We might use it more. Historically, we haven't used credentialing. We don't check whether someone's like academic degree or something like that. Some forks have done that in the past. They haven't been very successful. Apparently, PhDs fight among each other just as much or more than non-credentialed people. As one of my PhD friends shared with me, who was on one of these projects. Very good. But yeah, so there are some more tools that we could be using, but of course we do include we don't have credentials, but we have there's some community census of people who are a little bit more trusted, who might monitor something more. We do have administrators who are elected from the community who help monitor and protect articles, especially if they're under attack or if they're subject to a lot of controversy. We actually have a shortage of administrators, so if anyone wants to run, you should probably get some experience in Wikipedia first. You should do it immediately.
Yeah, that sounds like a very specific and punishing job. I will pass on that.
It is a very specific
if any listeners
job.
are interested.
But if you get started editing, and over after a little while, you might consider running for administrators. We have a bit of a shortage, or if you want to help build some administrator tools that maybe could help them watch new pages a little bit more quickly. Maybe some of your
programmers wanted
could help with that.
Mm-hmm.
And
so Evan's second question about scraping, like, I know the policy of Wikipedia is open access. We will never deny any human or robot access to it because it's always open forever. But and this dovetails into my next question, if ChatGPT is scraping Wikipedia, and then Wikipedia is feeding ChatGPT, which then generates articles for Wikipedia, which then gets scraped by ChatGPT, we get this like weird recursive loop of knowledge that is maybe get it deteriorating and disintegrating over time. Is there any reason why a website would say, no, stop scraping this site because we do not allow it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, Wikipedia is the single largest source for ChatGPT. We don't have, any policies against it. I mean, I guess maybe we want to limit if someone's like, putting resources on the website by scraping it so much. We have some policies against that. We have, I think maybe some fees if you want to, scrape it a certain level.
Oh, that's cool.
So there's Wikimedia Enterprise. I'm probably not describing that fully, but it involves some heavy corporate use, mostly designed for like search engines, where they can get
that's a great revenue stream for the nonprofit. I never thought of that. That's really good.
Yeah, it's a new thing. We don't give them any information we don't give to everyone else, but it's a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
It makes useful for some companies, some researchers.
Cool.
Yeah, so we have. We have all of this. So we're the number one source for ChatGPT. We are not suing. We are not suing OpenAI like many other places that are where it's scraped rather less from, like the New York Times and other journalistic sources. Mm-hmm. We have not
because it's not copyrighted work.
It is copyrighted work.
Wikipedia's
so the funny thing is, it is copyrighted work.
Okay. All right.
So everything on Wikipedia is copyrighted, or almost everything. It's not copyrighted to the Wikimedia Foundation. It's copyrighted to the individual contributors, like me and other folks. Almost everything is under Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license. One of the things you'll notice there is attribution share alike. Wikipedia's biggest problem with ChatGPT is actually the attribution. Often,
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, often they're using Wikipedia and they're getting facts from Wikipedia, and they're not attributing it properly. And they're not saying where it's coming from. And people, there's the danger that new generations of internet users are not going to get their information from Wikipedia, but they're not going to know it's from Wikipedia. And so how are they going to engage with Wikipedia itself? How are we going to get the new generation of editors? So that's another danger. So we've been trying to put some moral pressure to at least acknowledge when they're getting stuff from Wikipedia. And we also
I don't understand why ChatGPT can't just say, summary of this, sources, Wikipedia, New York Times, what I don't, and I know you're not an AI expert, of course, but they just don't have an incentive to do that or don't care to do it, or B, that the LLM doesn't know, I'm putting air quotes around that, it doesn't know the discrete sources it's pulling from. It is a black box that does not even know itself and cannot provide the sources, which is even scarier, I think, to some degree.
Yeah, I think that's true to a certain extent, that it is the black box. Although I think they could be doing more toward attribution, and they have been doing. And some of the tools have been doing better attribution recently. Another thing is, of course, Wikipedia could be selling its information to OpenAI. I think Reddit is maybe was the number 2 source, and they sold their information to OpenAI for about $400 million. That would be a pretty, given that it's a pretty small nonprofit, that would be a pretty good bonus for Wikimedia Foundation. But they've decided not to do that because it goes against sort of the wider principles. But we at least want to be acknowledged properly, and building back. And I think it would make the generative AI tools better too, to know where the information is coming from. I think right now some of these things that try to offer sources for the output, they actually, I think the mechanism is just to search the web and see if it comes from somewhere, which is really crude and not particularly helpful. But hopefully that future generations of generative AI, maybe we work more closely with the Wikimedia Foundation and some of the other big sources and attribute things properly, and let people know that, because if they want, you have this recursive loop, then there's a danger of garbage in, garbage out. If they want more stuff to process for their AI, then they're going to need more Wikipedians,
right?
And so they're going to want to let people know
they're
that Wikipedia
creating
exists.
their own demise by doing that. Yes,
so
exactly.
We're part of their ecosystem. So hopefully they can do something to help support the Wikipedia ecosystem, letting people know that that we exist, and they were providing much of their information and how people can contribute, how people can be part of the community. Maybe they can help, design some tools that we could use. And they have so much money, and they're making so much money off of us. So hopefully they can give something back.
Hey, just provide the sources and also just make a donation to keep the lights on at Wikipedia.
Because hopefully
they're deriving so much value from it and giving basically nothing back.
Yeah, so hopefully they can help in that regard. So if you're listening, we'd appreciate it.
Yes. Yeah. What was I going to ask you? It's escaping me now. Anyway,
is it the AI analysis of AI generated text? More about that, is perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, it was. Gosh, I'm totally blanking. Anyway, I'm sure it was very important and life changing, and we'll never know it. But well, I unless I think of that final question, I'm gonna let you get out of here. But if people want to keep up with you or follow your work or see what you're up to next, like where can people who are listening find out more about your work and your I mean, I don't know, is your Wikipedia editor handle your name, or is it some other
well, you can I mean, like other Wikipedians, I am not super focused on my public image. So I have a very minimal user page on Wikipedia. You can look it up. It's Pharos, Pharos. It's named after the Lighthouse of Alexandria, and it's a slight glancing reference to the Library of Alexandria and to the Statue of Liberty, because I'm from New York.
Nice.
So you can look up more on there. I'm very involved with, if people are in North America, I'm involved with Wiki Conference North America. We're going to be hosting a conference in New York this fall. And if people have any questions, I encourage you to just get active on Wikipedia, maybe join a Discord channel, maybe something like that. And there are a lot of welcoming communities that can help you get acquainted.
Speaking of the Library of Alexandria, you probably know that the Library of Alexandria burning down is a myth, and that it actually failed for other reasons. Do you know why? I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean it religion and politics, among other things. Yes. The reason things fail today sometimes.
Yes, exactly. Well, I say that as sort of a closing laugh of like, as I understand it, correct me if you know differently, like the library did not burn to the ground. It declined over time, as you said, because it was not supported or it was not invested in, and different political, religious organizations, some people liked it, some people didn't, and then it just kind of just fell into disrepair. And that was the end of
and there are all sorts
human
of
knowledge of the ancient world.
Yeah, I've just been, and this recurs again and again. Like, a lot of stuff was lost during, the printing press revolution, and a lot of the monasteries, a lot of monasteries were burned down, and the monasteries weren't always doing the right thing, but they did a lot to preserve knowledge over the generations, and we're in a bit of an. There's a science fiction author, a British science fiction author, I forget her name at the moment, Naomi Alderman, who did a nice podcast, actually. I thought it was called The Third Information Crisis, about how we've had things going wrong when writing was invented, when the printing press was invented, and now again with digital communications. And I think that has a lot of relevance to our current predicament.
Meaning there was such a flood of new information that it became very hard to understand what was true and not true.
Yes,
is that part of that?
Okay. Paralleled most particularly with, I guess, the printing press. When printing press, you saw like people talk about like the witch trials. The witch trials were not like from the deep Middle Ages. They're after the printing press came out, and people were like like it was like a new thing that people were like accusing. Protestants were accusing Catholics of being witches, and Catholics were accusing Protestants. And there was. It was a great amplifier of misinformation as well as information, and we're dealing with a bit of a crisis like that now. Because
people on one side they could print out a bunch of pamphlets and distribute it to the villagers, and people didn't have would get angry.
The sense of how you evaluate something as real or not real, because they weren't used to receiving pamphlets, and now you receive pamphlets from all of your friends and relatives, and there's a certain amount of learning that has to go on, and it takes time for society to adjust.
Thank you for sharing that. I am absolutely going to look into that and listen to that podcast and investigate that author. I think that's fascinating. Hey, maybe we'll even get her on the show.
Yeah,
I would love to talk about that.
It was a great
with her.
podcast. I think she has a lot to speak on these topics.
Richard Knipel, thank you so much for being a guest and for walking us through Wiki culture and Wiki project culture and giving us a little more insight into the complexities and nuances of AI. It's not all bad, it's not all good, but we're still figuring it out, and we appreciate your time.
like the printing press.
We're still figuring out the printing press.
Yeah, we still are. Yeah.
I always like talking about Wiki culture. I'm too afraid to be part of that culture. I just like to be on the sidelines and say, go team, keep knowledging and free and accessible and accurate. Maybe I'm part of the problem. Maybe I need to pitch in and add a sentence or two to an article that I know something about. I do contribute money to the Wikimedia Foundation to at least keep the servers and the lights on. And I think I shook Jimmy Wales' hand one time at an event in New York City. I think that was him. I've definitely been in the same room with him. I breathed the whale's air, and it was delightful. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for reviewing and patronizing this audio program. Hopefully it's valuable to you. I'm interested in continuing to cover Wiki culture wherever we may find it. So if you have suggestions for topics, guests, ideas, I was saying to Richard on the way out here that the gentleman who was chronicling all the buildings, the architectural, historical buildings in New York, he mentioned that his name is Ryan. That might be a fun guest to have on the program. So we're gonna see if that makes sense. Sounds like he's been doing that since he was a teenager, which is very fun. So as always, reach out to me, Discord, Patreon, email, voicemail. As you heard, voicemails are the most fun ways to incorporate your questions and thoughts onto the program. Don't be shy. My telephone does not ring. I certainly will not be giving my personal phone number out on the internet, but if you call 347-871-6548, you will reach the voicemail line for the show, and you can leave your voicemail with episode topics, guest suggestions, reactions to previous episodes, and of course, questions for future guests. For now, please be kind. Rewind your podcast after listening, and I'll talk with you or at you in 1 week's time.